I'm Daniel. I'm 25 now, but this story starts when I was just a scrawny 18-year-old kid with calloused hands from a part-time construction gig and a head full of ideas I didn't yet know how to express. I was the kind of kid who took apart the family toaster just to see how it worked, and sometimes, yeah, I couldn't get it back together, but I always learned something. I grew up in a small two-bedroom house with my mom, stepdad, and younger half-brother, Jeremy. My real dad bailed when I was 2, and my mom remarried when I was 8. From then on, it felt like I was just a permanent guest in my own home. Not quite family. Just tolerated. My mom, Sandra, wasn't the nurturing type. She was more of the pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind, which might have been okay if she didn't keep stepping on those same straps every time I tried to pull myself up. She worked as an office manager and always acted like she was the smartest person in any room, even if that room had a whiteboard and equations on it. My stepdad, Gary, didn't really speak unless he was yelling about the thermostat or football. And Jeremy? Golden boy. Straight B student, captain of the JV baseball team, and proud owner of a brand new laptop that mysteriously came from family funds after I'd been begging for help replacing mine for over a year. For as long as I could remember, I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't even care what kind, electrical, mechanical, software, you name it. I just loved making things work. I'd stay up late watching tutorials, scribbling notes on scrap paper, even scavenging old electronics people tossed in the alley behind our street. My grades weren't perfect. Working part-time while trying to keep a roof over your head tends to mess with your GPA, but I was smart. I knew I was smart. I just didn't have anyone in my corner. When college decision season rolled around, I got into a decent state university. Nothing Ivy League, but their engineering program was solid. I'd spent months working on my application essays in secret, using the school library computers because mine had finally died for good. When I opened the acceptance email, I actually cried. I hadn't cried in years. It felt like the first real one of my life. I came home that day beaming, clutching the printed letter like it was made of gold. I told Mom and Gary at dinner, expecting at least a nod of approval. Instead, my mom actually laughed. "Engineering? You?" she said, not even bothering to hide the smirk. "Come on, Daniel. Be serious." Gary didn't even look up from his mashed potatoes. "Too much math. You're not built for that." I stared at them, stunned. "I got in. I'm serious. I can do this." "You barely passed algebra," Mom snapped. "You think some college is just going to turn you into Einstein? Please, just be grateful we let you stay here. You're 18 now. You're not a kid anymore." That last part hit me harder than I expected. I'd always known they didn't see me the same way they saw Jeremy, but hearing it said out loud, like I was a burden they were only tolerating out of obligation, that broke something in me. I tried to argue, talk about scholarships, the part-time job I'd keep, how I could get student loans, but it was like talking to a wall. A cold, indifferent wall with a superiority complex. "Why don't you go to community college for a year?" Gary finally said. "Do something more realistic, like HVAC or plumbing. Those guys make good money." There was nothing wrong with those jobs, but that wasn't my dream. And I'd worked too hard, fought too many internal battles just to be laughed at by people who didn't even know how to open a PDF attachment without asking for help. That night, I sat on my bed with the acceptance letter on my lap, the edges starting to curl from my grip. I couldn't sleep. I just kept hearing her voice on a loop. "Just be grateful we let you stay here." At 2 a.m., I packed a backpack, 2 changes of clothes, my dead laptop, maybe someone could fix it, a spiral notebook half filled with circuit sketches, and my toothbrush. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay. If I stayed, I'd rot. I'd become exactly what they said I was. I didn't leave a note. I couch surfed for a few days, staying with a friend from high school whose parents were surprisingly understanding. I didn't tell them everything, just that things were bad at home. They let me crash on their futon while I sorted things out. I called the university's student services office and explained my situation. To my shock, they had a program for at-risk students, emergency housing, meal plans, a small stipend. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. The next few years were the hardest of my life. I worked 30 hours a week at a tech repair shop while taking full course loads. I skipped meals more times than I can count. I went to office hours religiously, swallowed my pride when I didn't understand something, and slowly, inch by inch, I built myself up. By junior year, I had a 3.9 GPA and an internship at a startup doing some pretty wild stuff with renewable energy. I was still poor, still living in a shared apartment with no AC and a questionable mold situation in the bathroom, but I was finally starting to feel like I had control of my life. I didn't speak to my mom or Gary once during those years. They didn't call. They didn't write. I saw a couple of Facebook posts about Jeremy's baseball games and his girlfriend and his new car, bought with help from mom and dad, of course. I tried not to care. I told myself I was done with him, but it still stung. Graduation came, and with it, a job offer I could barely believe. One of the engineers at the startup I interned at had left to start his own company, and he wanted me on the ground floor. Not just as a code monkey or lab grunt, as a partner. I didn't hesitate. We spent 2 years bootstrapping that company, pouring every dime into R&D, living off ramen and caffeine. And then, somehow, it worked. We broke through. The company exploded. Clients came in waves. Suddenly, I had equity. I had a team. I had an office. I had my own place with real walls, not just curtains strung between bunk beds. And for the first time, I felt like maybe I'd proved something. Not to them. To myself. That's when the phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was in between meetings when I saw the name flash across my screen. Mom. I hadn't saved the number, but I recognized it immediately. My stomach flipped. I don't know why I answered. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some part of me still hoped she'd say something human. Daniel, she said, her voice suddenly warm, sugary. It's so good to hear your voice. I was silent. She kept talking. Jeremy said he saw your company in the news. You're doing so well. We're so proud of you. That word, we. It burned in my ears. Listen, she continued. I know things were tense back then, but I was hoping you might be able to help us out. I finally spoke. Help you out? Well, your stepdad's job isn't what it used to be, and Jeremy's struggling to find something steady. You know how the market is. And I thought, maybe you could find something for him. At your company. There was a pause. Like she was waiting for me to jump in, offer a 6-figure role in a corner office. Like none of the past had happened. Like she hadn't once told me I wasn't smart enough. That I didn't belong. I didn't answer right away. My hands were actually shaking. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds longer than I normally would have. It wasn't out of pettiness. It was survival. I needed that silence to absorb the sheer audacity of what she'd just said. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, controlled. But I could feel that old ache in my chest, like I was back in that kitchen, 18 years old, clutching my acceptance letter while my own mother laughed in my face. She broke the silence first. I mean, you've always been good with computers, right? She said, her voice lilting, like this was just a friendly chat between close family. Jeremy's been learning a bit of coding online. He's a fast learner. If you just gave him a chance. Stop, I said. Not loudly, but firmly. The warmth in her voice froze instantly. What? I'm not giving Jeremy a job, I said. I haven't spoken to you in 7 years, and you're calling to ask for a favor? She sputtered, caught off guard. Daniel, it's not a favor. It's family helping family. I could feel my composure crack, just slightly. Where was family when I needed help paying for books? Where was family when I was sleeping on a futon and eating crackers for dinner? Her tone sharpened. Don't be dramatic. You left us. Don't act like you were thrown out on the street. I left because I had to, I said. Because you made it clear that I wasn't welcome. That I was just baggage until I turned 18. You told me to settle. You mocked my dream. And now that I made something of myself, suddenly I'm family again. There was a beat of silence. Then she shifted into something colder. More familiar. You've always been ungrateful, she said. We put a roof over your head. We fed you. And this is how you repay us? By acting like some big shot. I laughed. I don't even know why. It wasn't a joyful laugh. More like the kind of laugh that comes out when something finally clicks. When the mask slips and you realize they haven't changed one bit. You didn't put a roof over my head because you loved me, I said. You did it because it was legally required. You made me feel like an intruder in my own home for years. And now, because Jeremy's struggling, I'm supposed to forget all that? Pretend none of it happened? You're being selfish. No, I said. I was selfish. Selfish enough to believe I could be more than what you told me I was. Selfish enough to leave. And it's the best decision I ever made. I was about to hang up when I heard her voice crack, just slightly. Daniel, she said, quieter this time. Please. Your brother. He's not doing well. He didn't get into any colleges. He's been laid off twice. He's drinking. A lot. Gary's on disability now. We're behind on bills. I didn't say anything. We're going to lose the house. And for a moment, a long, painful moment, I felt it. That old guilt. The kind they planted in me like a seed. I pictured the peeling paint on our old porch, the smell of overcooked pork chops, the rattling air conditioner that only worked half the time. I pictured Jeremy, older now, maybe with a receding hairline, still smug, still cushioned by the belief that everything would be handed to him eventually. I pictured my mother at the kitchen table, arms crossed, reminding me that some people just aren't cut out for success. And I remembered the night I left, walking down the block under a flickering streetlight, my backpack digging into my shoulders. No money, no plan, just the stubborn belief that I could be something, that I was something. I took a breath. My voice was calm. I hope things get better for you, I said. But this isn't my responsibility anymore. And I hung up. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. A week later, I got an email. Not from my mom. Not from Jeremy. It was from Gary. No subject line. Just a block of text. No punctuation. No greeting. But the gist was this. You owe us. We raised you. You got what you have because of us. If you don't help your family, you're a fraud and a coward. Don't forget where you came from. That last line hit harder than I care to admit. Because they were right about one thing. I hadn't forgotten where I came from. I couldn't if I tried. Every all-nighter, every time I was told I wasn't good enough, every job rejection, every cold look across that dinner table, it was all still there. Burned into my memory. Etched into every part of me that refused to give up. I didn't reply to Gary. I didn't need to. But the emails didn't stop. A week later, another one. Then a voicemail from my mother. Then one from Jeremy himself, slurring his words, calling me every name in the book. Apparently, they had decided to band together in their desperation. And their anger was growing. One day, I came into the office and found my assistant looking pale. She handed me her phone. I think you should see this. It was a post. On a local community Facebook group. Local business owner turns his back on family, won't even help sick stepfather or struggling brother find work. They had written it. My mom, or Gary, or both. Complete with old family photos, stories twisted out of context, dramatic lines like, we supported him when no one else would, and money changes people. I was painted as a cold-hearted tech bro who abandoned the people who made him who he is. And people were starting to notice. Comments ranged from, wow, if this is true, that's disgusting, to don't believe everything you read. But the damage was done. A couple of clients emailed me confused. One even asked to pause our project until the situation is clarified. That's when I knew this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was far worse, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't sleep much that night. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me like it might carry all my thoughts away if I stared hard enough. But they stayed. The guilt, the anger, the sadness, it all circled like storm clouds, and in the middle of it was that Facebook post. That smug, manipulative little piece of fiction my family had cooked up and served to the internet like a steaming tray of half-truths. I knew what they were doing. They wanted to shame me into submission, to make me look like the villain. And it was working, at least a little. One of our junior engineers even came to me, awkwardly, asking if everything was okay at home. I could see it in his eyes. Pity. Doubt. Like maybe the version of the story he saw online was truer than the version I'd lived. I couldn't let it slide. But I also couldn't go nuclear, not yet. I knew I needed to be smarter than that. I didn't want to feed into the narrative they were crafting. No loud public statements. No angry rants. I built everything I had on discipline and patience. And now, those same tools would be my defense. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not to sue. Not yet. But just to understand my options. Turns out, when someone publicly spreads misinformation that damages your reputation in business, there's a word for that. Defamation. And if I could prove it had a financial impact, lost clients, paused contracts, I had grounds for a suit. My lawyer told me to start gathering everything, screenshots of the posts, emails from clients, even the voicemails. Part of me hated going down this road. It felt dirty, messy. But the truth is, when people try to drag you down into the mud, sometimes the only way out is to make sure they're the ones who get stuck there. Meanwhile, I had my assistant run a quiet background check on Jeremy, nothing invasive, just public records, social media, stuff like that. I needed to understand how far he might go. What I found didn't surprise me, but it did disappoint me. No job for the past year, failed community college enrollment, 3 DUIs, 2 of which had been conveniently scrubbed from mom's Facebook narrative. and a string of posts that were mostly him complaining about how people like me never help people like him. I didn't respond to any of the new messages coming in. I just watched and waited. And then, a week after the Facebook post, something happened that forced my hand. I was at a tech conference. Nothing huge, just a small regional event where my company was presenting a new sustainability prototype. It was going well, people were engaged, some promising investors had stopped by, and for a minute, I felt proud again. Like maybe I'd weathered the storm. Until I saw them. Standing in the back of the room, arms folded, sunglasses on indoors, Gary. And next to him, fidgeting with his sleeves, was Jeremy. I froze mid-sentence. My CTO, Ben, picked up the presentation without missing a beat, but my heart was pounding so loud it felt like the mic might pick it up. They didn't approach me during the event. They just lingered, watched, then left. But when I got back to my car in the parking garage, there was an envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. It had my name on it, written in Jeremy's messy, all-caps handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, "You're going to regret this. Don't forget who you used to be. Don't forget who helped you survive." No signature. No return address. That was it. The moment everything crystallized. They weren't just trying to guilt-trip me anymore. They were trying to intimidate me, to scare me into caving. And that was a mistake. Because if there's one thing I learned from spending years building something from nothing, it's how to think 2 steps ahead. How to use pressure as fuel. How to plan. So I made a plan. First, I called the lawyer again. Told him everything, including the note. We drafted a cease and desist letter, strong, formal, and very, very clear. It outlined the damage already done to my business, cited relevant laws, and warned that any future attempts at defamation or harassment would lead to a lawsuit. Then I did something I'd been avoiding for years. I reached out to my old friend Marcus, the one whose family took me in when I left home. He'd since become a journalist for a pretty well-known tech blog. I told him I had a story, not for revenge, but for truth. I wanted people to know the real version of how I got here. We agreed to meet in person. Sitting across from Marcus at a small cafe downtown, I finally told the full story. Everything. The night I left home with just a backpack. The rejection. The late nights. The ramen dinners. The startup. The calls. The emails. The Facebook post. He didn't say much. Just took notes. Asked questions. Listened. Before we parted ways, I said something that surprised even me. I don't want this to be a hit piece. I don't want to drag them through the mud. I just want people to know the truth. What it really looks like when someone makes it out. Marcus nodded. "I'll tell it right," he said. And I trusted him. A week later, the article dropped. It wasn't viral, not immediately, but it started to spread. From homeless to CEO. How one engineer built a startup after being told he'd never make it. The piece painted a picture of resilience, of independence, of quiet perseverance. It didn't name my family directly, but it didn't need to. People understood. The story resonated. Comments poured in. Emails. Messages. Even investors. The best part? Several of our paused clients reached out. "We get it now," one wrote. "Thanks for sharing your side." I didn't hear from my mother for weeks after the article dropped. Until I got another voicemail. Her voice was brittle. Measured. But underneath it, I could hear something new. Fear. "Daniel, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is getting out of hand. People are asking questions. Your aunt called me crying. Jeremy's been drinking more. Gary's furious. You're painting us like monsters." There was a long pause. "Just call me back, please." I didn't. I waited 2 days before making my final move. It wasn't out of hesitation, it was strategy. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to wonder if I'd heard the voicemail, if I'd seen the fallout, if I'd finally decided to bend, or if I was sharpening the knife. I wasn't going to be a doormat. Not after everything they'd done. Not after they tried to ruin my name, my company, and my peace. But I also wasn't going to sink to their level. No angry rants. No public mudslinging. I was going to end this the same way I started it, with quiet strength and one final, decisive choice. I called her back. But I didn't do it from my phone. I did it from the office, with my lawyer quietly on the line. Just in case. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was tight, strained, like she'd been rehearsing her tone in the mirror. "Daniel." "Hi, Mom," I said flatly. There was a pause. She clearly hadn't expected me to sound calm. "I didn't expect you to call back." "I know." More silence. I think things got out of hand," she said. "It was just We were desperate. Jeremy's in a bad place. Gary can't work. I didn't mean for that Facebook thing to go so far. I didn't think people would actually take it seriously. You tried to damage my business. It wasn't like that. I didn't know what else to do. You weren't returning our calls. You only called when you wanted something. And when I said no, you tried to ruin me. She didn't respond. I pressed on calmly. You've made it clear, over and over again, how little you believe in me, how little you respect me. And the second I build something worth protecting, you try to take it from me. That's not desperation. That's entitlement. Now her tone changed. So you're just going to punish us? For being human? For making mistakes? No, I said. I'm going to protect myself. I've worked too hard, come too far, and been through too much to let anyone, drag me back down. That includes you. I heard a shaky breath on the other end. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said. But it sure makes me free. There was one final thing to say, and I made sure I said it with absolute clarity. You are never to contact me again. Not through calls. Not through messages. Not through social media. If you do, my lawyer will be in touch. And if you try anything else, anything at all that affects me or my business, I will sue. I have the documentation, the timeline, the witnesses, and the resources to do it. Do not test me again. Silence. Then, Daniel, please. I hung up. It was done. I blocked her number. I blocked Gary's. I reported the Facebook post and had it removed. My lawyer's cease and desist letter finally kicked in once it was clear we were willing to go all the way. I reached out to the remaining clients who had gone quiet and personally reassured them with honesty, professionalism, and transparency. Not one of them left. In fact, 2 of them doubled their contracts. As for Jeremy, he never reached out again. I heard through an old high school friend that he ended up moving in with one of Gary's cousins. Last I checked, he was still unemployed, still bitter, and still posting vague rants online about snakes in the family. I don't wish him harm, but I don't know him anything either. And me? I'm better than ever. The company's growing. I'm mentoring young engineers who remind me of myself at 18, brilliant but ignored, driven but doubted. I tell them what no one told me. You're allowed to dream bigger than your surroundings. You're allowed to leave when it hurts. You're allowed to build your own life from the ashes of the one that tried to break you. Sometimes I still think about that night I left. The weight of the backpack, the silence of the street, the fear in my chest. And I'm proud of that kid. Because he didn't run away. He walked toward freedom. And he never looked back.